I see. Well, hello, chaps and chaps, Game Chap and Birdie here.
Yes.
Yes, indeed, fellows, and I dare say we are now reporting here on something rather interesting that's cropped up for Mortal Kombat X on PC, are we not, old chap?
We most certainly are, yes indeed. It would seem that a certain community, as it were, is saying that they've got a quotes mod now, the PC version of Mortal Kombat X, which, shall we say, unlocks a lot of things.
Oh, really? And I think perhaps we are talking something that goes beyond regular unlocks in the game here. We are actually talking about a mod quote that unlocks things you shouldn't really have.
Most certainly. Now, of course, whenever you have a PC version, you're going to have mods, big modding communities around lots of games, such as GTA 5, etc., so forth. And no doubt there will be for this one. But this one being called a mod, apparently, as far as we know, actually allows lots of DLC, yes, I did say DLC, costumes and goodness knows what else, to be unlocked and actually played within the game without actually getting the DLC, as it were.
That's right, and as far as we know, this actually works at the present time on all versions of this game on PC, so it's quite an extensive, shall we say, mod for the game. Now, to be precise here, we are talking that things such as the Goro and various other character DLC are made available to play without having to pay for them or buy them on Steam, etc. and so forth, whichever platform you might use. Also, certain additional special costumes for the characters beyond the ones you can normally get in the game, like, for example, Gold Scorpion. The costumes like that, which are normally only part of the collector's edition of the game, are made available for anyone to play using this mod.
They most certainly are, yes indeed, and we have had it verified it does actually work, whatever this is. So, rather interesting point here. Normally when we're looking at mods, they're adding interesting things in, maybe different player skins, whatever, that aren't normally in the game.
Yes.
But this one is actually giving you access to something that is in the game that you normally have to pay for, you see.
That's right, and I think this raises two interesting points. Firstly, is such a thing even allowed? And secondly, of course, should these devs really be including a DLC in the game and then charging you for it to unlock it, of course? So there's two camps of thought there. First, we have to say, okay, this is a bit questionable at best, I think, old chap. And secondly, you have to say, well, should the devs not be offering that as a separate download? I mean, if it's already in the game in the first place, it's just a software lock.
Well, exactly, yes, software lock or whatever. That's a very good point. Because, as you say, on one hand of one side of the story, people can say, well, hang on, that's not right, you shouldn't do that. But then the other camp will say, well, hang on, I paid for the game. It's right, I've got the game here. And they didn't say anything about, I can't play the game properly or there's more to be added, but I have to pay for it afterwards. It didn't say that on the box.
Well,
so why can't I just unlock this and this mod's great and so wonderful?
It's a difficult point, really. I mean, I never really gave it much thought up until now, just thinking about it right now, and I have to say, this indeed appears to be a mod for the game per se. They're not doing anything that's strictly illegal, as it were. They're saying we're simply accessing content that's already in the game that we have arguably paid for, but of course it also has to be said that normally you can't access that content, whether or not it's on your PC, it doesn't matter. It's software locked behind a DLC wall.
Most certainly, which raises an interesting point. Now, I don't know what the chaps out there think, all you listeners that are listening, think about that. If you're playing Mortal Kombat X, whether you'd use that or perhaps whether you wouldn't use it, but it raises an interesting point across the whole board, not just for this game, but for perhaps other games as well, where things can be unlocked like this with quotes mods.
Right, so basically the devs have put in characters like Goro, like Jason, etc. and so forth, and various other hidden costumes in the game that you can't normally get. They are included in all versions of the game, but what they've said is actually, no, we're not going to let just anyone have these. We'll lock these behind either DLC walls or collector's edition walls, etc. and so forth.
Right.
But actually, all this content is in the game for anyone to use if they conceivably knew how to get at it.
Right, okay, now I'm thinking a couple of things here that's come into my mind. Firstly, what are we actually talking about here that is unlockable, as it were?
Well, right now we have 3 unlockable characters, I do believe,
right,
and also an absolute slew of unlockable costumes, okay? I am told that apparently, to be precise, it gives you all costumes, all fatalities, brutalities, all faction kills for every faction, all crypt items, which are normally very hard to get, all the faction borders, icons and backgrounds, and also 4 alternate arenas and some custom combat modifiers, in addition, of course, to the DLC characters from the game. Now, that includes not just the existing DLC characters like Goro, but also DLC characters that are soon to be released. One, I believe, example is Tanya.
Right, so what we're looking at here then is everything from arenas to costumes, even to characters.
That's right.
Now the other thing that I'm thinking about here is, in some games, you can play through and you get to a certain stage or complete a certain thing and it unlocks that character or another arena or whatever it may be.
Yes.
Now, are these things unlockable in that way, or are they only payable only as a DLC, or are some unlockable in that way and some you have to pay DLC?
I think, yes, you've hit the nail on the head there. Some of these are unlockable using the regular game route by investing hundreds of hours into the game, or goodness only knows how long, and I would say that perhaps the people who want to cheat their way around that's a little bit dodgy perhaps, but of course it's perfectly possible to do so. However, some other content in this particular unlocking mod is actually things that you usually have to pay for, like those DLC characters and like those special outfits.
An interesting sort of thought there, because certainly on the former, just thinking there, I mean, unlocking things like that in a mod, it's not something that we haven't seen before. We've certainly seen that before in other games and mods where people unlock those things you normally have to fight through to get.
Yes, and you have, of course, in the old days, you used to have cheats, for example, for a game that let you skip your way through towards unlocking all the characters. But these days, especially when you've got devs putting things in the game and just saying, you can't have those, you have to pay for those, when you've already bought the game, it's a bit dodgy, really. I mean, on both sides of the game.
Well, it is. I mean, there's two ways to think of it, as we've said. You can say, well, I bought the game, and sure, you have to go through and do unlocks and things like that.
Yes.
Fighting through characters and reaching certain levels to unlock certain things, and I think that's fair and good. But if then they said, well, we're going to put other things within the game, and you cannot access them at all without parting with more cash, then perhaps that's a little bit, perhaps something we don't want to see, maybe, or a bit questionable.
I think so.
And the fact this modification, quotes, unlocks that, maybe it's, never mind.
It's a bit of a grey area in some ways, if you ask me, because, of course, let's just take Skyrim, for example. The Elder Scrolls Skyrim, you could not unlock, for example, the Dragonborn DLC in that game. You had to download it, and I think that was fair play.
Well, exactly.
If you want the DLC, like Dragonborn, or I think one was Hearthstone, no, that's World of Warcraft, but anyway, Dragonborn, one example, you have to download those additional packs. You can't just press a button and magic them up.
Exactly. Now, thinking what you said there, if you're downloading something fresh and new, it's being created new and done for the game, and it's new DLC that you can download and add on.
Yes.
But it's already in the game.
Yes.
I mean, and then you've got to pay to get it.
That's right. I mean,
that. Well, is that really on?
If you put something on someone's computer and then say, here's the game you've bought and here's all the data files for it, okay? There we go. But then you say, oh, but hold on, those data files there that I've already installed on your computer, you can't have those ones, okay? You have to pay me more for those ones, okay? It hardly seems fair, old chap,
Well, indeed, there is that way of thinking, and the other way of thinking, of course, is you could say, well, that's what they've done, so that's what they've done, and accessing it, other than by means of paying for the DLC is not really right. You could say that on the other side, you see.
Well, if you ask me, it's like, for example, a brand new car is delivered to you, but you see, you can't actually use the radio in this car or the CD player because, of course, it's hidden behind a special pass-coded combination lock. You see, if you want that, you have to buy the radio DLC. Now, what they should have done, of course, is shipped you the car without the radio in the first place.
Well, that's a very good point.
Putting it in your car is a bit like an open invitation to try to get at it. Of course, it's only natural.
Well,
that's what people want to do, after all.
Exactly, it's an open invitation. This community has gone in and unlocked things that you can, as we said, you normally have to fight through or level up to get. And it just so happens this has been unlocked as well.
Exactly, and I think perhaps the school of thought I'm thinking here would be that if perhaps the devs want to keep these things under a DLC-only sort of paywall, they should not allow them to be installed with the main game's files. They should be a separate download.
Well, it's a very good point. I don't know what the listeners think, or everyone that's listening to this, what they think about that. Feel free to put your comments there and see what your opinion is on the whole thing.
Indeed. Do you think, Fellows, this is fair game? Do you think it's dodgy? Do you think it's outright illegal? Well, let us know what you think, I say.
Well, it's a very interesting point, as we say, yes, indeed.
But certainly, I think where you've got things like the gold scorpion costume that could only be accessed usually by the collector's edition, perhaps unlocking that is a bit unfair on those who have already bought the collector's edition, and I think it was $150 or more for that particular version of the game.
Or was it really? Oh, well, there's an interesting point there, then.
So another school of thought says, perhaps certain people should not have access to those, but it does really come back round to what I said a moment ago, which is if the devs don't want all people having that content, it shouldn't be shipped to everyone's game copy by default.
Most certainly, and I think they're liable to look at this, and I'm sure lots of game makers will look at this and say, perhaps also they made it rather easy to unlock as well.
Yes.
There's another point there.
Perhaps.
But I think it may make them think, perhaps, in future if we're going to do this, we need to make it downloadable after the event rather than shipping it with the game. And of course that encourages gamers as well, because then they know they're getting something fresh and new that's actually been done and it's added on, and it's rather more fun than just it's already in the box, as it were, but you can't get it.
I know, and I think a lot of people perhaps don't like the idea of on-disc DLC. I know it's something I don't particularly like, but I can see the dev's perspective in saying, well, we can't give you a gold scorpion costume because, you see, all the players who don't have the collector's edition can't use it online, and therefore you can't use it either, because we'd have to somehow download it to their computers in order for it to work. So their solution is just to say, well, let's give it to everyone, but only unlock it for people who've bought the collector's edition. And it's a bit of a sort of, it's a strange and grey area sort of issue, I think, old chap.
Well, it is. So let us know what you think about all this. Mortal Kombat X and mods and unlocking DLC you shouldn't have, or should you, and all the rest of it.
Well, fellows, indeed, is this a genuine mod for the game, or is it a downright dirty, underhanded trick? What are your remarks, I say?
Oh, yes.
This has indeed been Game Show and Bulletin, bringing you news of a Mortal Kombat X DLC mod, shall we say. Thank you most kindly for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you once more in the next exciting article, my words. Until then...